Hello and most welcome. Today we will talk on Septemics, hierarchies of human phenomena. It can help you achieve your goals faster and easier. Our guest today is Jim Marshall. Mr. Marshall is a polymath intellectual who has devoted over 50,000 hours to the study and practice of multiple dimensions of human potential and development. After 28 years of formal education, he had long career as a human development engineer. He has successfully treated and trained hundreds of clients and is the inventor of Septemics and several consciousness expanding systems. His areas of expertise include psychology, philosophy, theology, parapsychology, science, engineering, mathematics, metaphysics, human potential, physical culture and education, and some more, including music. Let's welcome Mr. Marshall to the show. Mr. Marshall, tell us how are you doing today?
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much. So, Mr. Marshall, uh, what would you like the audience to know about you?
Well, I'd like them to know that I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I constructed a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics, and published it in the book Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena.
Great, wonderful. And how you decided to write this book on Septemics?
Oh, that's a long answer. The story really begins when I was 16, when I was accepted into engineering school.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, I thought at the time that I was going to be engineering physical things, such as electrons, airfoils, motors, and such. But by the time I had my bachelor's degree, it was clear that I wanted to engineer the human psyche, because that is the area of greatest unknown, of greatest mystery, and more importantly, the area in which we as a race are failing miserably. 95% of the problems in industrialized society are because people do not understand people, don't understand the wife, don't understand the boss, don't understand the son, don't understand the next door neighbor. That's why we elect idiots to run our governments, because we don't understand them. And this book solves that across 35 axes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to make a long story short, I had a long career as a human development engineer, working one-on-one with hundreds of clients of every description for cumulatively many thousands of hours. As I was working with my clients, I started to notice that I could predict the outcome of the session. Now, I never told this to anyone, but I made notes. And as the decades went by, I just kept making notes, and I came to realize that the client would be at a specific level on a specific scale that I had previously observed. And as a result of our interaction, he would go up to the next higher level. Now, this happened thousands and thousands of times, and every time it did, it verified my hypothesis. Well, by 1995, I had about 32 scales of varying lengths between 3 and 7. And I had one in particular that I had been using for decades that I knew was correct. Well, I was pondering a particularly difficult client once, and I realized that this client was at a level on that scale that I had not previously observed. Well, it was obvious to me where to insert this level in the 6-level scale. And when I inserted it, and it became a 7-level scale, it manifested mathematically, which is to say all of this mathematical data jumped out at me. I wasn't looking for it. When that happened, I said, whoa, I don't know what this is, but whatever it is, it has to be natural law, because anything that has mathematics embedded in it is natural law. For example, the Fibonacci sequence. So then, I thought, I wonder how many of these other scales that I have are actually 7-level scales that had not been developed all the way, because I wasn't developing anything. I was just helping my clients and making notes. So, knowing what I was looking for, I inspected these other scales, and in a short period of time, each of them went to 7 levels, and each of them manifested mathematically. Well, when I saw this, I had 32 scales, they're all 7 levels, they all have mathematics embedded in them. I said, this looks to me like a new subject that could really help people. So then I said, well, the next thought I had was I could go from helping people by the hundreds, which is what I had been doing as a human development engineer, to helping people by the millions if I put this data in a book and get it out. So I have to write a book. So the first draft of the book was completed in December of 1995. And I sent copies of it to colleagues of mine, all of whom had graduate degrees in a variety of subjects. And they all responded very positively. They had different responses, but they were very positive. Well, that verified what I already thought, which is that I had found a new subject that could really help people. People get this. It's not difficult. So I spent the next 25 years writing this book. Because you have to realize, first I had to discover the phenomena, which was largely done by 1995, as I explained, although I did find 3 more scales while I was writing the book. Then I had to take this data and use it to construct a workable philosophic system. That took 20 years. Simply having scales is not enough to be a workable philosophic system. So I had to coax the data out of this and figure out all the ramifications of each of these scales. The most time-consuming part of this was expressing all of this in a way that would make sense to the average reader. And I continually rewrote the book. So what would happen is I'd send out a version of it, and I would get feedback from students and clients and colleagues and such. And then I would take that and I would rewrite it and send it out again. This happened many times. And each time it got closer and closer to a presentation that would make sense to the average reader of English. And I know I succeeded at that because I've been seeing people respond to this for 28 years now. People get this. They look at it and they say, oh, yeah, I see. This makes sense to me. This is not obscure and difficult. So that's how I figured this out. There's no theory of septemics. It was all just empirically observed in my sessions. Now, of course, once I saw the phenomena in the sessions, I would see it everywhere I looked. I'd see it in people that I met. I'd see it on the internet. I see it in movies. So this is natural phenomena, and it's very real. And because of that, people get it.
My question is, what is human development engineer? First, a short answer to that. Yeah.
Okay. So a human development engineer is a person who works one-on-one with clients to help them overcome their barriers, attain their goals, and improve themselves. This is done using engineering principles, part of which is biofeedback. I became very adept at using biofeedback. In case you don't know, every time you think a thought, the electromagnetic field around your body changes. And in fact, specific types of thoughts have specific manifestations. So I could tell with specificity what was going on in the person's mind. In other words, if you are upset, it manifests one way on the meter. If you're worried, it manifests a second way. If you're angry, it manifests a third way. So I would know without the client telling me what was going on in his mind. And so I use Socratic dialogue, which means essentially asking the right question, guided by biofeedback. And the biofeedback would guide me into the most fruitful areas, and it would also tell me when we were done with it. So I would know when to end off. So I didn't just keep going. So that's what I did as a human development engineer. And all of this data just fell out in front of me that led to Septemics.
Oh, wow. And do you think the idea of energy, as Nikola Tesla says that everything is energy and vibration, do you think it also, like some people says in spiritual mythology, that if you vibrate in a different energy, you manifest that specific energy. For example, whatever it is associated with that. Were you working like this? Like some people are living in an energy or in a vibration. Is it? Yeah.
Actually, yes, I agree with everything you said, and that was part of what I was doing because I understood that
Mhm.
that the mind is actually an electromagnetic uh, field spectrum,
Mhm.
and because it's electronic, you can you can actually delete parts
Mhm.
of the subconscious by getting the person to view it. Because once he can see what it is, it's not subconscious, it's conscious, and then it has no power over him. So I was using that continuously all the time. But everybody in physics understands that it's all energy. Matter is just condensed energy.
Mhm. Mhm. I went through your book. It was phenomenal. But I want to know how much uh, trust people should put on it, and then how valid this septemic is according to you. I know you trust on it fully, but I want the audience to see how valid it is. The
Okay,
Septemics book. And before that, please tell me what is septemic.
okay. Septemics is a philosophical science
Mm-hmm.
based on the fact that many phenomena related to human beings occur in a sequence of 7 levels. Literally, the word septemics means of or pertaining to 7. Septemics comprises a collection of scales or sequences, each of which breaks down various human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. There are 35 such scales, each of which is unique. And together, they span the spectrum of human experience, by which I mean any problem, dilemma, situation, difficulty that any person has can successfully be analyzed by one or more of these scales, usually more than one. So it gives you a way to get a grip on what's going on in a very specific way, in a sort of an engineering way. Now, uh, I already know from having spent most of my life on this, uh, including my whole career as human development engineer and including 25 years writing the book, that the scales themselves are correct. They are correct in the same way that the Pythagorean theorem is correct, in the same way that Newton's 3 laws of motion are correct. They are correct. Now, you can quibble about what word I use to describe it because writing is an art. And you always have different ways of saying things. I mean, I could say something is red, it's crimson, it's scarlet. They all more or less mean the same thing. They're synonyms. So that's something that I spent a lot of time on trying to find the exact right word to explain the phenomenon. And I must have been pretty successful, but because I've seen people get results from this book. People read this book, they get it. They say, yeah, I see this. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Like I'll be reading a scale, right? And he gets down to a certain level, let's say hypothetically level 4. And he says, wait a minute, this is my mother. This is exactly how she is. Oh, I don't know this guy's mother. But the phenomena is natural law and it's expressed in a very specific way. So the guy will see it. You see, he'll see, yeah, this is my mother. She's at this level on this scale. Now, every person is at some level on every scale. And so it's very useful to, you can ignore that data if you want, but it's much smarter to use it. It's not that hard to do. Okay, so you have to realize, as an engineer, I'm only interested in facts and results. Okay, to engineering, opinions and beliefs are irrelevant. They are not even considered. So if you said, you want me to build a bridge over this river, it's about 100 yards wide, I would just ignore that 100 yards. I would get out a laser beam and throw it across the river, and I would get an exact number. It would say 99.23 yards. See, that's what I would use. So that's how engineers function, and I'm a very typical engineer. Now, let me tell you how this will benefit your readers or your viewers. I wrote this book to help people. I've had a lifetime of helping people. Each of these scales provides the user with an infallible way of determining the salutariness or beneficialness of any group, individual, or activity. If the group, individual, or activity moves persons up the scales, it's positive or beneficial. If it moves them down, it's negative or detrimental. So I'm giving you a yardstick to measure human phenomena. You don't have to guess anymore. More importantly, just finding out what level you or another person is at on any scale is by itself enlightening and beneficial. Every time you correctly spot a person, whether it's yourself or another, on any scale, you have a realization. You say, oh, that's why Mary and Joe can't get along. It's right here. See, that is one of the ways you know you got the right level, because it resonates. You have a realization right away. You see, oh, that explains why I do this. Now, once you know the actual level, meaning the correct level of any person on any scale, you can improve that person by moving them up one level at a time. I have solved the gradient problem that has bedeviled mankind for at least 6,000 years. Most people have problems and dilemmas and situations that they can't resolve because they don't know the gradient. Every good teacher, coach, therapist understands human development must occur on a gradient. So what I was doing with my clients for 40 years is I would pick up the client at the level he was at, and I would move him to the next highest level. Now, as I developed these scales, that became more precise. So I just got better at what I did. But in general, you cannot help people unless you use the right gradient. And I'll give you an example. I've worked as a physical trainer. Let's say a guy comes to me and says, I'm 100 pounds overweight. Would you train me? I say, okay. I'm not going to tell that guy to go out and run 5 miles or give him a 100-pound barbell and say, lift this. That's bad training. That's malpractice. Okay. I would say to him, do you think maybe you could walk 1 mile every morning? Right? And he's probably going to say, well, I think I could do that. And I say, okay. So I want you to walk 1 mile every morning. And at the end of the week, we'll talk again. And after a week, I say, how did you do? Right? Now, if he says to me, this is tough, I say, all right, just keep doing it. If he said to me, I can do this easily now, I say, great, let's try 2 miles. See, that's finding the gradient and moving him up to the next level. And that is what these scales do. So each of these scales is like a lens that you can hold up to a mirror to see yourself clearly, or hold up to another person to see that person clearly. And so your understanding is enhanced by using this material. So it's very reliable and it's very user-friendly. This is not hard to do. If you can read English reasonably well and you want to improve yourself or others, this book is for you. Now, the reason I say yourself or others is you could have a person, let's say he has 180 IQ, he has a doctorate, He has $10 million in the bank, and he has a body like Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? You could say, well, this guy doesn't need this book. Oh, really? He's got a daughter who's getting involved in drugs. He's got a wife who's cheating on him. He's got a boss, a partner who's stealing money from him. And he can use this book to straighten out all of that.
Yes, thank you so much. Here, to clarify for our audience, when I went through your book, it has 32 to 35 chapters, and each of it is a scale. And
Yes.
in each scale, there are 7 dimensions,
Seven
I think.
levels.
Levels, yeah,
Yeah.
7 levels. So please name some of these chapters, some of the
Okay.
important chapters, and give examples. What are the rule of these dimension or levels?
Okay. So let me just tell you the names of the 35 scales. All right. That takes about a minute. And then you'll know exactly what subject matter is addressed.
Before
Okay.
that, I'm so sorry. Before
Yes.
that, why also give me a short answer? Why did you divide a human being into 35 chapter? Is there enough of everything? If each is a human being complete in that 35 chapter, or we need more?
Okay. Okay. Well, first of all, I did not divide humans into anything. That's just the data that I got. You know, the whole point of science is that you observe something, you make a note, you propose a hypothesis, and then you test it. You see, and if the hypothesis tests out, you continue to develop it. That's how scientific data is developed. That's how this was done. Okay, this was all just empirical. It was by direct observation. But the best answer to your question is, let me tell you the names of the 35 scales. And then you tell me if I have covered everything. Okay? So these are the individual scales, meaning they apply primarily to an individual. The scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, and the scale of reaction. And these are the group scales, meaning they apply primarily to groups. The scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics. Any one of these scales could dramatically improve the life of the user. And together, they empower one to understand, predict, and manage human affairs to a degree hitherto unattainable by most.
Amazing. So in each scale, for example, the relationship scale, then go to the levels. What are the rules of this level and how to go to the next level?
Okay. Well, there's actually a couple of different questions in there.
Yeah.
Basically, let me explain something. There is an old rule in engineering that says that asking the right question is 90% of getting the right answer. Mm-hmm. The reason why Einstein was able to figure out the theory of relativity is he asked the right question. Nobody else had asked that question, you see? So this plays out in the book because once you know your level, the next level up is where you will go if you advance. So in a sense, you're asking the right question. You see? So it's like finding your level is 90% of getting up to the next level. Because when you see what level you're at, and then you look at the next one up, you say, oh yeah, that makes sense. That would be the next one up. And the reason it makes sense is it's natural law. So I have solved the gradient problem. These are the 7 levels are the gradients for each of these 35 axes. So I'm telling you step by step how to advance. And since everyone is at some level on every scale, you find your level, and it's not that hard usually to get up to the next level. It's usually fairly obvious. In other words, it kind of explains itself in the context. So there is a long section in the introduction to Septemics in my book on how to use this to get yourself up to the next level. And there's another long section on how to use it to get other persons up to the next level. So now how long it takes, what you have to do, how difficult it is, all of that, that is a wild variable. I don't know that because every person is unique. Every situation is unique. See, you might get a guy who goes up to the next level in minutes, and another guy could take years. We don't know that. But just knowing what level you're at clears your mind. You get insight. Let me explain something about insight that sort of undercuts all of this. This is all about insight. You need some insight in order to use this book, but also it develops insight. When you find a correct level for yourself or for another, you have an insight. You say, oh, now I see why Mary and Joan are such good friends. They're at the same level. You see, you have an insight. Now, because you have more insight, you are better able to use the book. So you use it in another context and you have another realization. So this is like a virtuous cycle where the more you use it, the easier it is to use. The easier it is to use, the more you use it. So this is like you're going downhill. You're just accelerating the whole way.
Exactly. So give us an example of
Okay.
some skill and how it affects our life and how people can use to develop it or to go to the next level.
Okay.
As I said, the relationship or any of them that you choose.
Okay. All right. So let's take the skill of relationships. So let's say you have a friend, right? And your friend is having a relationship problem, right? He's complaining to you all the time. I don't know what I'm going to do about my wife. She wants to leave me. She's talking to a lawyer. We're having fights, right? So you want to help him because he's your friend, right? And you're tired of listening to this. So you say, Joe, come over here. Look at this. And you open up the book to the scale of relationships. Now, he's going to look at that and he's going to probably say, you mean there's a scale of relationships? And you'll say, yes. This relationship that you've been complaining to me about for 6 months, where is it on this scale? Now, you have to realize there's only 7 levels. It's not like he's trying to select from among 1,000 things. It's only 7. Now, what's going to happen is he's going to want to know this because he's having trouble and you're helping him. So he's going to look at it. In a matter of seconds, 15, 20, 25 seconds, he will find a bracket. Meaning he'll say something like this, well, I can see right away that levels 1, 2, and 3 do not apply to us because we're having a lot of trouble. You see, he got it down to 4. Now he only has to select from among 4. It's even easier. So then you say to him, okay, go ahead and read the text. And you can help him with this as a tutor, right? So he reads the text, you answer any of his questions, and now he comes back and he looks at it. He says, well, see, he's been living with this nightmare for 6 months, right? So he knows in his mind what it is. And so when he sees the choices, he's going to say something like, well, I can see right now that we're at level 5. No wonder we're having trouble. That's a low level. See? He's having a realization. Now, he might have a further realization. He might say, well, I don't know if this is worth doing. Maybe we should just not bother with this. You see? He's sort of already getting further ideas about how he wants to handle it. Does he want to save the relationship? Does he want to get out of it? See, it will help. Then you say to him, very good. Now, let me show you something else. And you open it up to the book of sexuality. So he looks at it. He says, you mean there's a scale of sexuality? And you say to him, yes. You don't have to tell me, but for your own illumination, where are you on the scale? See, he's going to want to know that. So he looks at it and he's going to find a bracket. He'll say something like, well, I can see right away 6 and 7 have nothing to do with me. That's their out. And definitely not 1 or 2. I don't even understand those. So it's got to be 2, 3, or 4. So you say, okay, let's have you read the text and then you can get it exactly, right? So he knows who he is. He reads the text, he comes back, and he finds out, okay, I'm at level 4. That explains why boppity 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 bop. See? And then you can say to him, okay, let's move you up to level 3, and then you'll be at a higher level and it'll be better for you. He's going to want to do that. You see? Then you can say to him, now, let me show you the scale of allegiance. He says, you mean there's a scale of allegiance? And you can just explain to him, as they do in the book, anytime a relationship deteriorates, it's always because allegiance has deteriorated, right? So you have a married couple. They promise to love, honor, and obey till death do us part. So now the guy's fooling around on his wife. He's going out with somebody else. That's a lessening of allegiance. You see? He's not being loyal to her. So he's gone down that scale. So you let him look at it, and he will find a bracket. He'll say, well, I can see it's definitely not 1 or 2 because this is not an easy area for me. Okay, let's have you read it. See, he's got it down to 5. He reads it in a matter of seconds. He finds where he is. You can help him as a tutor. And then you say, okay, good. I see you decided you're at level 4. Let's move you up to level 3, and then it will be better. Now, I could keep doing this because in a relationship, that's complicated. You have 2 people interacting. So there's going to be maybe 6, 8, 10 different scales that are going to be relevant to this situation. By the time he does those 8 or 10 scales, his mind is going to be so clarified, he's going to know exactly what he wants to do. He's going to want to know, do I want to go on with this woman and fix this up? Or do I want to just get rid of her because it's a waste of my time? See? Either way, that's up to him. That's not for us to say. But I'll tell you something else. Whether you find yourself at a high level or a low level, you're going to be happy with the result because it's an epiphany. Let's say you spot yourself at level 6 on a scale, right? That's almost at the bottom. All right. Now you're going to have a realization. You're going to say, oh, that explains why I can't do this, 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 and this. I'm at level 6 on the scale. See? He's not going to be unhappy about that. He's going to be happy. So let's say you have a couple, right? And they're talking about getting married. Wouldn't it be smart for this guy to know, why does this woman want to marry me? Wouldn't that be a smart thing to know, right? So he looks at the scale of motivation. Now, maybe her motivation is that she loves him, right? He knows her. He looks at the scale. He says, yeah, I can see she wants money because she loves me. Okay, and maybe that's a good reason to get married to somebody. But let's say he looks at it and he says, I can see now she wants to marry me because I drive a Maserati, I own a 60-foot yacht, I fly my own Learjet, and I live in a $10 million estate. That's a different motivation. See, that's what we call a gold digger. Now, he might want to marry a gold digger. He might say, hey, I want to marry somebody who loves me, and he breaks up with her. He will not be upset about that. He'll be relieved. Thank God I figured it out now, right? Before I wound up paying alimony to this woman. So he's going to be happy with the result, no matter what level it is. Now, then you might have another guy for whom a money-motivated woman is fine. You may have noticed there are a lot of rich, older, unattractive men married to young, beautiful women. Have you noticed that? How does that work? I'll tell you how it works. The 23-year-old beauty queen gets a diamond ring, a pearl necklace, a mink coat, a Corvette, and a credit card. The guy gets a 23-year-old beauty queen for his wife. So he doesn't care if she's a gold digger. That's fine for him. She says, I want to go to Paris for the weekend. He says, okay, here's $10,000. Have a good time. See, he doesn't care. So for him, that might work. So it's very personal. There's no judgment involved in this. It's just figuring out, what are we looking at? Who is this person? Is this somebody I want around me or not? Now, I'll tell you, I go through this all the time because I know these skills perfectly. So I'll meet somebody either online or in real life, and I'll spot this person on certain scales. Okay, could be high, could be low. If it's low, I say, whoop, I don't want to mess with this guy. He is a downscale person. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Goodbye. But the opposite also happens. I'll meet somebody who's very upscale. You know, a person who has good communication skills, a person who is decisive, a person who has a good memory. There's all kinds of different traits, right? I read you the 35 skill. A person who has equanimity. And I can say, oh, this is somebody I want in my life. It could be personal, it could be professional, whatever. But you can see those traits. And it depends on the context. Let's say you own a car dealership and you need a new salesman, right? So you talk to this guy, and as you're talking, you find out he's money motivated. When you look in his eyes, you see dollar signs, right? So that's what you want. He gets a percentage of every car that he sells. So he's going to be out there pitching, trying to sell these cars. That's why you're hiring him. So you see, in this context, somebody being motivated is a good thing. It's what you want. So this is very personal, and you use it according to the situation.
Yeah, I saw some skills there. It was related to the workplace that they can develop it if they want to get good at their workplace.
Yes.
And I just wanted to know, getting to the next level, which actions, if you can explain concisely, like what actions they need to take. For example, if they are in the level 4, how can they get to level 3?
It depends entirely on what scale are we talking about and the
Yeah.
person, because every person is unique and every situation is unique.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what makes this work. You analyze it. When you analyze it, you see it clearly. When you see it clearly, you know what to do because it's clear. It's not vague in your mind. You see, let me explain something. If you invited me to your house, you said, Jim, come to my house and look at my beautiful garden. I'd say, great. And I come over and I go into your garden and I say, oh, he has tulips, he has roses, he has peonies, he has chrysanthemums, he has hydrangeas, because I know flowers. You see, I know you have to care for a rose completely differently from the way you care for a tulip. They're very different. Now, if you invite some 5-year-old kid to your garden, he'll look at it and say, oh, these are pretty and they smell nice. That's all he knows. He doesn't know anything about hydrangeas or chrysanthemums, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, most people are like that little kid as regards people. That's why 50% of the marriages in the United States end in divorce. And fewer than 50% of Americans are even married at all because they don't understand. They get discouraged. So you see, I don't have that problem. Like if I meet a woman, I can say, well, I'm not messing with her. I can see she's at this level. She can't make decisions. She doesn't have any spiritual reality. She's not very literate. Her thought is, I can spot her and say, okay, you're a very nice person. Goodbye. And then I meet another person and I see she's at or near the top of many scales. I say, this is the girl for me. You see? And that goes across no matter what's going on in your life. If you're in business, there's a scale of management. It tells you with specificity how to manage anything. It doesn't matter if it's a hot dog stand or Walmart. It's the same 7 levels. Or there's a scale of human ability, which tells you what to do with a person in your organization, because at each of those 7 levels, there's a different way to handle the person. It tells you specifically what to do with this person. See, if a person is a professional, you get them to produce. This guy knows how to write code. Okay, let's get him writing code, and he's producing. But that doesn't mean he's an expert in it. If he's an expert, you make him the director, you see, and he tells everybody what to do because he's an expert. It's a different thing. So this works. This is very important in business. I've hired a lot of people in my life because I was an entrepreneur. I once had a guy, he was overqualified for the job. I said, you have such tremendous skill and resume. Why would you want this job? He had no answer. Okay. He went away. So I could see he was too good for this job. So I got another guy who was just right for that, fit him in. So, it's not like, you always want to get the best person available. You want to get the right person that's going to fit, that's going to do the job the way you want it done.
Mhm.
Somebody who's, for example, there's a scale of communication. The scale of communication by itself is a life-changing scale. Because if you study that scale, I give you drills how to master those 7 communication skills. If you do that, you become a master of communication. And that is a massive power to have. Ronald Reagan was called the great communicator. He had spectacular communication skills. He was reelected in 1984 in the greatest landslide in American history. He won 49 of the 50 states. How did he do that? His communication skills. He communicated to people. It wasn't just Republicans who he communicated to. He communicated to Democrats. They were called Reagan Democrats. He communicated to independents. He communicated to libertarians. His skills were so good, he would go on TV and he would say, now we have this bill and it's a good bill and I want it to pass and here's why. Call your senator. Okay? And they would, because he connected with them. So that one scale alone is very powerful. I don't care what you're doing. Okay? Because everybody has to communicate with somebody. So just that one scale alone, if you focus on that, will change your life. Because having good communication skills is a power. You can get people to do things, to get people to like you, get people to work with you, and so forth, because you can connect with them. So that's just one scale as an example of how this is useful. But let me tell you in a general way how this is useful in one sentence. The data in this book are vital for every person and can help you to achieve your goals faster and easier by explaining what might otherwise seem to be inexplicable or random. So there's all kinds of things in your life you don't understand. You don't know if they're just inexplicable to you, or maybe they make no sense at all. But after you look at the book, you say, oh, this does make sense. I see what's going on here. He's at this level and she's at this level, and they conflict, and that's why they're not getting along. It becomes very specific. And because it's specific, it's easy to use.
Mhm. Mhm. So this is very important to listen to your belief on this, that as a very important author, that some people believe that these skills are a natural talent that never can be changed, as we all know that. So do you believe that every person, each person can develop all of these skills, or any of these skills that they want, or it is as they believe it is just a talent that some people has it and some people don't have it and they cannot develop it.
Okay, so first of all, let me explain. This book has nothing to do with talent
Mm.
unless you're talking about developing your talent by moving up the scale. Okay.
Mm.
Also, it has nothing to do with belief. It has absolutely nothing to do with belief. Let me give you an example. The acceleration of gravity at the surface of the Earth is approximately 10 meters per second per second. That is a scientific fact. You don't have to believe me. You can go out with a golf ball and a watch and calculate it yourself. Okay. There is no belief about that. It is a fact. E equals mc squared. Okay. That it was developed mathematically. Anybody who knows math and physics can see exactly step by step how he got to that. Okay. It has nothing to do with belief. Now, there are things that have to do with belief. If you believe in a certain religion or a certain political party, okay, that's why I don't discuss religion or politics. It's about belief. I have nothing to do with that. There's no belief in this. What I do know is some of the scales are harder to move on than others. Some of them are more volatile than others. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. The scale of basic purposes, for example, more than 90% of all people have the same basic purpose for their entire life. They never change on that scale. Now, knowing what your basic purpose is a life-changing moment because you throw out the other six. You say, this is for me. This is what I am about. And it clarifies your life. So going forward, everything is much easier. But rarely does a person actually move on that scale. It happens sometimes, but it takes something big. If you're going to move up on that scale, it takes some major transformational experience through therapy, meditation, or some religious experience or something where you have some big epiphany and you can move up a level. Or if you have something terrible happen to you, you can go down a level. So let's say a guy, he gets mad at his wife, he kills her. They put him in jail, right? So he's going to go down a level. That's a traumatic experience. Okay? He's not going to be the same person when he comes out. He's going to be at a lower level on that scale because that's a terrible thing. But barring something big like that, people don't change on this. And that's one of the reasons that scale is very valuable. Because once you spot somebody on that scale, you've got him. You know what he is about. Now, on the other extreme is the scale of evaluation. People move on that scale by the minute or by the hour. So let's say you have a friend. He's never been to a soccer match in his life, doesn't watch it, has never seen it on TV, doesn't know anything about it, right? And you're going to the soccer match. You say, Mary, come with me. I have 2 tickets. She says, okay, right? She doesn't know anything. All she knows is there's a bunch of guys with short pants running around and there's a ball out there. So you take her into the stadium, right? Now, as she comes in, she's at level 4, which is neutral. As she's watching it, she's going to either go up or go down. So you turn to her after a half hour and you say, are you enjoying this? He says, yeah, this is pretty interesting. I can see why people would like this. See, she has gone up a level to level 3. But she might say to you, this is boring. Why would anybody want to watch this? She went down to level 5. See? So she's evaluating it. Okay? So there's 7 levels of evaluation. So that is very easy to move on. So it depends on the scale and it depends on the person. Some people are very stubborn. I have a client, brilliant person, okay, with a degree from an elite university, very successful person. This guy is stubborn. It's not easy to get him to change his mind on anything. That's how. So if he looks at this, he's going to have some difficulty. You see, changing a level. That's just the way he is. So that's what I mean. It's very personal. So can he use it? Yes, he can use it. But some scales are going to be easier to use than others. So there's some people who look at the scale of communication and say, wow, where have you been all my life? This is what I need. And get totally into it, change his whole personality because his communication skills come up. You know, I discovered when I was 16 that I could establish a rapport with a complete stranger in 15 minutes. And the way this happened was when I was a 16-year-old boy, like everybody else I knew, I was very interested in 16-year-old girls. Right? So I would go to dances, high school dances, and you would meet a girl, right? And in 15 minutes, she'd be telling you her whole life story. I said, wait a minute, this is interesting. And I found that I could establish a rapport. This happens all the time. I get in an airplane. By the time I get off the plane, the stewardess and I are like best friends. So that's like a communication ability, you see? Not everybody has that. So there are 7 levels in communication, and you have to master all of them in order to communicate well. If you're falling down on one of those 6, it will sabotage your communications right at that level.
Mm. One more question about this, like if a person in the relationship is in level 2 and the other person is in level 5, it is obvious that the level 5 person is in difficult situation. But what about this person in level 2? He can get along with that person easily. He has more control in the relationship.
Not necessarily. Let me put it to you this way. The person at level 2, if he knows how to use this book, can get the person at level 5 up to level 4.
Mm.
See, then they're not so far away. And then when he's at 4, she might be able to move him up to 3. But again, it depends on the scale. And let me give you an example. In the scale of sexuality, it's obvious when you look at this scale that some of these levels are incompatible. I mean, one of the levels is can have sex, and another level is can have sex. Well, if one is at one level and one is at the other, you don't have a relationship. So nothing's going to happen there, right? So that's it. You're done. Now, if you can move the person who can have sex up to can have sex, then you can have a relationship. So what I know about that scale in particular is you have to be at compatible levels. It doesn't mean you have to be at the same level. So you could have somebody at level 2 very happily getting along with somebody at level 4. And if you look at the scale, you'll see what I mean. So it depends. Again, it always depends on the scale, and it depends on the person. Because the person is going to think about this. He's going to make a decision. Something that happened to me many times. Clients would come to me. I had a reputation. My name was out. I would meet people. I would give lectures. People would come up to me. Would you work with me? Right? So people, and I would meet couples, right? And I would be able to see, sometimes even before I worked with the person, that this person was going to get a divorce. I didn't say it to anybody. I would never say that to anybody. So I work with the person, right? Person is happy, does very well, and then 6 months later, she says, yeah, I broke up with Joe. Well, I'm not going to say I knew it all along because it's not my place, but I did. See, I could see it. So that's sort of what you can see when you get this data. You can see that, okay, I can see that this guy and this guy are not going to get along because these levels are really not. But it depends on the context. I'll give you an example. If I were talking to Dr. Jordan Peterson, I would talk straight across to him at the same level that I normally speak. He would understand everything I said. But when I talk to my housekeeper, I would have to modify how I speak because I want her to understand me. See, I wouldn't use the word colossal or enormous or gigantic or gargantuan. I would say big. Then she knows what I'm talking about. See, there's 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 a big amount of dust over there. Okay. See, if I were talking to my son, might say there's a colossal amount of dust over there. See, he's an educated person, he would know exactly what I'm talking about. So again, you have to, once you know the level, you use it. You use it to make things work. Now, sometimes you use it by getting rid of people. For example, on the scale of basic purposes, the lowest level is level 7 is the subversive. His objective is to destroy. Now, I am a serious student of military science. And I was studying World War II and Hitler from when I was a teenager. And I looked at some of the things he did. I said, why would he do that? That doesn't make any sense. Strictly from a military point of view, right? He made 6 or 8 catastrophic mistakes between 1939 and 1945. Catastrophic. Now, once I realized that he was a destructive person, then I understood. See, he wasn't just trying to destroy the Allies. He was destructive to the Wehrmacht. He was destructive to his family. He was destructive to Germany. That's what people like that do. They're destructive. So then I understood why he did the dopey things he did. See? So then my understanding of him and World War II was greatly enhanced. See? His generals all told him, if the United States gets into the war, we will lose because their industrial might exceeds all of Europe combined. He didn't listen to them. He declared war on the United States. He didn't have to do that. That was because he was a destructive person. See? And look at the results. Look what he did to Germany. And the people that he fought. He wrought destruction. All 60 million people died in World War II, if you include everybody, the civilians and everybody else. Okay? That's because he was destructive. When you get a destructive person in charge of a major country, that's what happens. So it's very specific. If the people of Germany had this book in 1933, the Nazis never would have come to power. The Nazis won 37% of the vote in 1933, which was a plurality. They won more than any other party, which began the sequence of events that led him to taking over the country, right? If the Germans had this book, he would never have gotten 37%. Maybe he would have gotten 20%. But you know who that 20% would have been? Psychopaths, sociopaths, crazy people, ignorant people, racists, professional criminals. They would have voted for him. But the rest of the people wouldn't. 20% wouldn't have been enough for him to have a plurality in the election. So I can absolutely guarantee, if you study this book and understand it, it will prevent catastrophes, dilemmas, bankruptcies, indictments, divorces, fistfights, et cetera, because you know what you're dealing with. And so you don't mess with it. You don't get into that. And that's very useful to people.
Exactly.
Just as an example, right? Recently, I met a woman, right? Beautiful woman, beautiful, okay? But as I spoke to her, I could see she was at or near the bottom on a whole bunch of scales. Thank you very much. Goodbye. We're done. She didn't understand. It's true she was beautiful, but she's also dopey. She was low on a lot of scale. I wasn't going to put myself into that. That's how you use this. And it goes the other way too, right? So a girl meets a guy, she knows this book, she says, yeah, he's high on the scale of choice, he's high on the scale of control, he's high on the scale of physical fitness. This is a uptoned person. I want to be around this person. See? And you make a good choice for the better or for the worse. Either way, you make a good choice. And that's how this is useful to you.
One short question I have here is, as people, what would you say to those people who get your book and want to read it? What are the main, according to your experience, obstacles that they cannot level up in each skill?
Well, and the first thing I would say that's important is this is a textbook on an entirely new subject. So you should start on line 1 of page 1 and study it the way you would study a chemistry text, a physics text, an economics text, a mathematics text, okay? And until you get to the end, study it. Don't go past anything you don't understand. This is not a coffee table book. It's a textbook. Now, then go back to the beginning, and the second time you read it, find your level on every scale. By the time you get through the second reading, you'll be a new person. You'll be greatly clarified. You'll know who you are, what you're about, what works for you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? Of course, you can try to move up. But the first thing you want to know is, where are you? Write it down. Okay? You can mark what level you're at on every scale. And then you can have like a little project to go up to the next level on each one of those. Mm-hmm. But you have to realize, as I said before, each scale is unique. So there's no generality about how to use this. You cannot infer anything about scale A from studying scale B. They're unique. One has nothing to do with the other. So you have to look at the scale. You have to study it on its own terms. I'm very careful to explain it in detail in a way that's easy to understand. So if you can read English reasonably well and you want to improve yourself or others, this book is for you. You just have to go through the process I just gave you. Now, some people will say, well, everybody wants to improve themselves or others. No, I'm sorry, that's not true. There's all kinds of people who have no interest in improving themselves or others. And these would include sociopaths and psychopaths and narcissists and professional criminals, serial murderers, war criminals, people like that. They're not interested in improving themselves. They're interested in cleaning out your bank account and stealing your wife. That's what they're interested in. So, first of all, they wouldn't read this book. And even if they did read it, they wouldn't understand it. Because if they were smart enough to understand this book, they wouldn't be like that. They would be upscale people. They would be lawyers and doctors and accountants. Okay? And then, even if they did understand it, they wouldn't use it because it's contrary to their way of life. I'm teaching people how to be more ethical, more considerate, more insightful. You know, all of these traits that human beings aspire to. Well, if you get somebody who's a professional criminal, he doesn't care about that. He just wants to have a lot of money so he can buy cocaine and women and a Cadillac, you know? So he has no interest in this. But I have actually calculated approximately 50% of the human race wants to improve oneself or others. And it's not hard to do this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Mr. Marshall, for answering a lot of questions today. Can you please tell us how people can find you, your book, and your work?
Okay. Well, I invite your viewers to my website, which is septemics.com, septemics.com, where you can see what many readers have said, what many journalists have written, what the reviews are. You can read sections of the book itself, and there's a pre-recorded introduction to Septemics that you can listen to that will explain the subject to a new person in an easy way to understand. And after all that, you're probably going to want to buy the book. It's easy to get. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Barnes and Nobles. If you just put the word Septemics in a search engine, you'll get hundreds of responses. including all the people selling the book.
Thank you so much for joining us today on GNR Podcast. It was really illuminating to have Mr. Marshall share their expertise and insight with us. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave your comments below. Stay tuned for more engaging conversation. Until next time, take care and keep exploring new ideas. Thank you very much.